Welcome to The Beautiful Side of Grief, your go-to podcast if you're wanting to hear from people who have moved through heart-wrenching loss or those who are at the coalface supporting the process. It's diverse, heartwarming, though most of all it is positive and filled with go-tos that you can use yourself. I'm your host, Helen Morris, and I'm a health professional turned energy healing practitioner after I lost my only child and daughter, Tal, in a car accident in 2017. I want to use my own unique experience with loss to help you navigate your journey. You will hear from grief coaches, mediums, authors, first-hand loss accounts, plus many, many more. I'll put the links to any free resources in the episode notes. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can keep informed of each weekly episode. So now grab a pen and paper if you want to jot things down. Sit back and relax as we navigate the beautiful sides of grief. On the beautiful side of grief today, we've got Ambila Nath, known to her clients as the girl next door of spirituality. She's a serial entrepreneur, a certified coach, spiritual teacher, paid international speaker, and an avid follower of her passions. She's got a corporate background in management consulting, and Ambila is far from your stereotypical spiritual coach. She went from a six-figure corporate job to having a spiritual lifestyle business. She knows the greatest journey you can have is the one that you build with yourself. And she sums it up with, life isn't complicated. Actually, we are. With over 20 years in coaching work, Ambila has also known the struggle of losing a loved one firsthand through losing her sister from a terminal illness, and how you need to make sense of it all to find clarity and purpose and to find your new normal. So we're going to have a chat about that and how it's impacted on her spirituality, her religion and relationships. And if you would like to know more about what Ambila does, you can find all her contact details in the episode notes. As always, thanks for joining us to listen in, and I appreciate you being here. And be sure to share this podcast with others if you found it helpful. Now, let's hear from Ambila. So, Ambila, welcome. It's
Helen.
wonderful to have you joining me from the other side of the world in the UK. My morning, your evening.
It certainly is my evening. And Helen, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be in part of this wonderful podcast.
You're welcome. So we're just going to get straight into it. And I would love for you to be able to share with us the circumstances surrounding the loss of your beautiful sister. Are you happy to do so?
100%. Yes, 100%. My sister was diagnosed with bowel cancer in 2016. She caught it, or rather when they caught it, it was at stage 4, so it was going to be terminal. She went through a year of chemo, radiotherapy, new treatments, everything, because it had already gone into her lungs and liver, I think.
Oh, my goodness.
When they caught it. So they were working on reducing those tumours. They weren't able to do that, but they kept on going. So for about a whole year. And then we finally lost her in August of 2017.
Gosh, that's not very long ago either. So I'm very sorry for the loss. How old was your sister at that time that she was going through this struggle?
She was 56. Yeah, 56. Oh. So she was due to be 57 in November, but yeah, she was 56.
Gosh, that's very young too, and I understand that she had a family of 2 children, is that correct? Yes. Husband and 2 children that she left behind. So, gosh.
They were both in their early 20s then.
Yeah. Still difficult regardless of what age you are. Mm. So what was this journey like for you personally and for your family? And firstly, getting your heads around the diagnosis and the fact that it had metastasized, that not only was it in her bowel, but in other organs in her body, and the real possibility of losing her. Was there acceptance early on that she might make it if you just all sort of, had a positive attitude and did all you could? Tell us what that was like for you.
Well, when we heard, I think that the first initial thing is shock, because you hear of others, you don't, or you hear of your cousins or your aunts or somebody else who's not so intimate and close in relationship as a sister, sibling, or parent. So when we heard it, it was a shock. But I think we all as a family just went into the mode of, you're going to be okay, you're going to get through this, we'll see what the treatments are, and, you know, into the solution mode. So, and I think even she herself was in that mode as well, that I'm going to get through it, it's going to be okay, we're going to do that. So hence why we were just pushing through, you know, with all the chemotherapies and things like that. And when the first one didn't work, we were like, okay, second one. When the second one didn't work, we were like, yeah, great. Into, you know, the third one, then radiotherapy, then the operations. And so that there was constantly kind of like, we were not wanting to give up hope. And I remember my sister-in-law having been through this journey with other family members on her side of the family. I remember her actually voicing to us, maybe 6 months to us finding out, that maybe you guys need to acknowledge that she might not make it. To which we just shushed her. You know, went, nope, that's not going to happen in this scenario. Yep, thank you so much, but nope. And, you know, on we went. And I think it was very much when, you know, they said that the tumours have just spread even further. That's when we started that possibility that it wasn't going to be, you know, she's not going to come through this. That's when I think it started to kind of kick in.
Yeah.
But
that's such a natural reaction to want to be the, you know, the best supporter out there, to champion them on, to say, okay, no, let's try the next step, and, you know, try and keep things positive. But she actually knew, didn't she? She, you know, when she tried to tell you guys, you know, that was her understanding that, you know, perhaps that journey wasn't going to go as everybody had hoped and planned for. So reflecting back on that, what would you do differently with the time you had with your sister?
I think the time, because when we actually came to that realization was a month before. So
Which
that
isn't
only
very much.
No, because the 12 months we were too busy fighting it. And then the, you know, 1 month left was, you know, kind of like the game changer. But within that, I think what those 12 months gave her was longevity. I think even though the treatments didn't cure her, I think it just gave her more time. So within that time, what I would have done differently is maybe not being so much in the pushing it forward mode, you know, putting that pressure on her of, you know, come on, you can fight this, you can make this happen, you can do this. But maybe be there more from a loving and supporting point of view. One of the things that I know, and I did apologize to her before she passed, was that I never acknowledged the amount of pain she was going through. And I'm not just talking about the emotional, but the physical pain that, you know, cancer gives you. And because to me, it was like, oh, for God's sake, you know, come on, you can pull through this. You've got to work harder. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. And I think I would have just spent more quality time having conversations that we never had.
Right.
But I also think those conversations are difficult to have.
Yeah.
Because it's acknowledging from both sides.
Why do you suppose you found it difficult to understand her pain or acknowledge her pain and still wanting to push forward? Was that because of your own, okay, I'm not ready to lose her yet, and so we're just going to keep pushing this? Or where were you coming from, do you think?
I think I was coming from a little of that side, but I think a lot of it was probably my coach. I'm a life coach for those listening. So I think a lot of it just came, and also I'm an energy healer. So I think a lot of it came from the point of view where I believe strongly that if we're not dealing with emotions, pains and stuff, it manifests into chronic disease and other things. So I was coming from that point of view of, come on, begin to let go of the crap that you're carrying in your body. You can do this. You can heal this. You can get past this. So it was purely from that point of view. But as you asked me that question, I also then had the realization that maybe I didn't want to give up and accept the alternative.
Yeah. And especially as you say that you had these tools at your disposal to sort of help her through all of this, especially from a sort of a mental and emotional aspect. But I guess, there are some times, I think the realization is that it's a two-way street. So the other person has to be 100% into that for that to sort of have its effect.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that she realized that maybe she knew that this was too far on and that it just was the journey that she was on, and that was that. So no amount of, positive thoughts or anything like that were going to get her through it.
Well, she didn't actually know until I think 6 weeks to 2 months before she passed.
Right.
So it was my sister-in-law who was actually telling us to be realistic, but she herself was also fighting and convinced that she could get through this.
Right. Sorry, I misunderstood that connection though.
Fine.
But thanks for clearing that up. So it was your sister-in-law. Yeah. So how has this impacted on your own spirituality and your own faith? Because I know that you come from a background of, is it Hinduism? Yeah, is that your background? And I know that you're living very much in a westernized culture. So did that play a part in her treatments, and then what happened, once she had passed, that you had to sort of navigate? Or just share with us too, just how you kind of meshed, or how your culture played a part in all of this.
I'm not sure the culture had any major part in it, because even though we are Hindus, the life cycle of somebody passing and it being unexpected, I think it's just going to be difficult. So there wasn't any kind of religious beliefs or anything like that equipped us for it, because I think all of those go out of the window when you're in that kind of scenario, and it just becomes a person-to-person thing. And I don't think helped during the time leading up to it, because we had 4 days before she passed. So from the point of view when the doctor said this is going to be it, she actually hung out for 4 more days. So we had 4 more days with her. So from that point of view, I would definitely say there was comfort in terms of tuning into the religion, because my sister was religious. And so being able to share that time with her, but do it from a point of view of the Indian Gospels, that the Indian folk songs, being sung while she's there to help her, to give her comfort, to relieve pain, but also to actually help us, to give us that kind of peace. I think that helped. God, my spirituality, how did that? I think, again, when you're in that mode of losing somebody so close, I think even spirituality and religion and everything goes out the window, because all I was automatically in was the nurse mode, the care mode, wanting to, and we all were, we wanted to make it as comfortable for her and loving for her. And I was in the mode of looking after everybody else in the family, making sure everybody else's grief was being managed, and I was holding everyone else up. So I will be very honest, I don't think consciously at that time religion or my spirituality came into it, because it was just in the mode of being there on an emotional level.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because quite often there is the expectation, especially as a life coach and, and the spirituality, a lifestyle that you have, that, you've got the answers, you've got the solutions. Yet the reality of it is that it comes down to the fact that this is your sister and she's going through something, very difficult for all of you to get your heads around, and it's just those natural reactions that everything else does go out the window. It doesn't matter what experience you have, it doesn't matter what background you have. Maybe in a few aspects it does, but the reality of it is that this is your relationship with your sister and your family.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%. And I think that's what basically binds you, because it's more about the love that you're surrounding, and her by, because that indirectly is then feeding the energy, and just being there and supporting each other, because it's not just about my sister, but it was all about the people she was leaving behind. Yes. And, how we were going to then carry on in relation to that.
Yeah, and that leads me on to my next question, because I'm very interested. Often it's immediate family or parents who get offered a lot of support in both the journey and then afterwards when you lose somebody. And, I know you have so many tools at your disposal as a coach and as with your spirituality to help you get through situations like this. Though I'm interested to know what sort of support over and above that you had access to as a sibling with grief.
Zero.
Zero.
Absolutely because sorry.
No, that's okay, because I see that a lot in the groups that I'm a part of, that there are a lot of siblings that feel like they're just left out there to just manage and cope with this. There's lots of support groups for, parents and for people who have lost children and, other examples, but often the siblings are overlooked.
Mm. And it's just so weird, because my role within my family is that I am the caregiver. So I am the person that holds everybody else up.
Yeah.
And even before I qualified as a coach and stuff, I somehow was always in that role. So from my parents' point of view, my siblings' point of view, I am the person who can deal with anything and everything, because I do go into that automatic solution mode. Okay, this has happened. We just need to move forward. Let's make things happen. Let's move it forward. And that's what happened when my sister passed away. So I myself pushed my grief to the side, because I was too busy looking after and managing other people's griefs and making sure they were okay. So, and nobody was actually there who saw my grief, because they just saw me as, oh yeah, we just go to her. And I never actually managed my grief up until last year.
Oh, so good that you actually brought that point up, Ambila, because I feel that there are so many caregivers out there who are doing exactly as you said, so busy looking after others that they put their own grief to the side, which is so typical of what I did. I was more worried about Tal's friends and how that was impacting on them. And so I just sort of took over that sort of role just to make sure that they were doing okay. And I was there for a lot of people, and in one way, it made it easier for me to cope because I wasn't focused on what I was feeling. But at some stage, that does come out. And how did that come out with you? Like, what made you realize that you hadn't dealt with this?
Well, so a year later, in 2018, November, I manifested vertigo. And up until that point, I had never, been ill, not to that, you get the colds and stuff like that, but not scary, because it was something I couldn't control. And because it took about 6 months before the diagnosis, realization, what was going on, getting all the holistic help as well as medical help and all of that kind of thing. And once it calmed down again and I felt myself back in control and my body in control, I started looking into what on earth was going on. And I have a wonderful, wonderful friend who's a spiritual counselor, as well as my tarot reader and stuff. And I remember saying to her, why can I could not get my energy to settle? And she said, you've not dealt with the grief. She said, basically what I'm seeing, and this was also the stress of lots of other things that were happening in my life at that time. She said, your cup is overflowing. And I said, yeah, but I'm a coach. So I cry, I let out, I know how to process this thing. So therefore, how can my cup be overflowing when I'm dealing with my emotions on, other aspects of my life as well as, because with my sister, I thought I had been through the grief.
Yep.
Leading up to it, I had accepted that it was going to happen. Afterwards, I'd done all of that. So in my mind, that was something I had dealt with. So all of this was related to what was currently else going on in my life. And she said, basically what's happening, she said, you've not dealt with your sister's grief. So that cup is already at the top level. And everything else that's coming into your life is the overflow. And she said, yes, you have a cry, whatever you do, journal, whatever, you let it out, the cup goes down. But then other people come back to you and then they add all of their stresses on. And then the cup goes overflowing. So you're never actually reducing or emptying anything that's existing out. And I went, okay.
That's so good to understand, because that's what I feel so many people are going through. They feel perhaps they've dealt with their grief, they've had a good cry, cried endlessly, cried bucket loads and things like that, but maybe they haven't actually just gone a bit deeper and actually really sat with that grief. So how did you do that? What worked for you to actually really get in touch with your grief and acknowledge it and allow yourself to deal with that?
Well, I'll tell you the before and I'll tell you the actual reality. Okay. So when my sister passed away, prior to that, I never used to really keep a journal. I might write, a day here, a day there, but I never kept a journal. And since my sister passed away, I've kept a journal every day.
Right.
So in my mind, I was dealing with stuff because I was writing stuff down. So when my friend, who I said, is a spiritual counselor, when she told me this, she said, we need to work on this. And I went, okay, let's do it. So we did. And she would now say, we're never going to do it that way again for anyone else. But we did a walkthrough of the days leading up to my sister passing and then a few days after. So we did like a 7-day journey.
Okay.
So the first day, because she's also a tarot reader, there was a lot of information I had forgotten about, never told anybody, that she picked up on. I was like, oh my God, how did you know? How did you know? And as a result of that, the first day of the walkthrough was so painful that I could barely sleep that night. I had such anxiety and heavy chest of not being able to breathe. And I just said to her, and again, completely forgetting as a coach, that when you start a journey, that's probably the most difficult day that you'll ever have, but then it starts to get better. And in my mind, I was like, oh my God, if day 1 is like this, imagine what day 7 is going to be. Rather than actually thinking I'm getting lighter, I thought I would be going in the opposite direction of getting heavier and more intense. Right. So I sent her a message and I said to her, I can't prolong this. I can't do it as a weekly thing. Can we do it as an intensive? And she agreed. And actually, the journey was a lot better as we moved along. So by day 4, things were getting, a lot better. But I had to there was so much I acknowledged, and it was working with her that I realized that during that whole time, nobody was actually there for me.
Wow.
Nobody actually thought to ask, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Nobody actually thought to ask, because it wasn't out of malicious or anything. It was just that they thought she must be doing fine because she's, coping with everything. So she must be absolutely fine. So that it never occurred to them to ask me. And then the day of the funeral, because up until that time, religion-wise, we have 11 days of mourning before the funeral. So when my sister passed, we had 11 days of mourning, then the funeral happened. So those 11 days, I was actually staying in her family home. There were lots of other people there as well, but I was there for the whole time. So after the funeral happened, I was the only member of my family who went home alone.
Oh.
Because my brother, of course, he has his own family. My parents have my sister and they have each other. So that, so they were there. But I lived by myself. So I don't remember what it was like when I came back, but I was on my own when I came back.
And it's only on reflection that you actually understand that, isn't it? Because, you're so used to doing that. You're so used to just picking yourself up and, heading on home and doing what you need to, that your aloneness doesn't actually, register that, this is having a huge impact on you until you reflect back onto it. And then you think, oh, actually, that wasn't such a great idea.
Yeah, exactly. And Helen, exactly as you said, I think from knowing, again, as I said, out of memory, maybe I've blocked them out, but I can't remember. But from knowing who I am, I know that I would have just gone into the busy mode. Oh, I haven't been home for 2 weeks, so therefore there's a lot to do, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do that, and I've got to do the shopping, and I've got to do that. And I just would have gone into that mode.
Yes.
And, and meeting friends for coffee and stuff like that, and just having a catch up with them. So that's
and this whole grieving process is not just about the actual loss, is it? It's about the relationship that you had as well, because quite often, that comes into play, all those things over the years that have built up, even if you have the best of relationships, sometimes there's still stuff there that you've never acknowledged that comes out when you're grieving. Do you feel that?
Good question. It's one of those hard ones to think about and reflect on, because I don't think it's something that you acknowledge or kind of think about. My sister and I, we have had a nearly 11-year gap between us, and so we were beginning to just get close as I became an adult. When I say an adult, I had my own journey of leaving home, and culturally that was another battle and stuff. But when I came back into the fold, we were rebuilding a friendship and, getting to know one another. And she was getting to know who I really was, not the little sibling that she remembered, but the woman I had become. So, and we used to have a lot of laughter and lots of fun. And there was, lots of things that she was observing from me and learning from me in terms of the positivity, the mindset, things like that. And this was well before any cancer, diagnosis and stuff like that. So, yeah, so it was a journey.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just reflecting on my own situation.
What would it have been for you?
Yeah, because I also think that, grief can be really complicated, that sometimes there is so much else wrapped up in that, not just the things that you'd wished you had said, but the type of relationship sometimes that you wished you had and fostered. Whereas, sometimes you let your ego, get the better of you, and that takes charge. And so you make decisions that are just crazy decisions. And it's not until you stop and reflect back on them and you think, jeepers, maybe I could have been the bigger person there, and and just offered that sort of olive branch and
I mean, that was a great thing regarding my sister. She always saw the best in everybody, regardless of how bad you might have been to her. She was always the one that gave the olive branch. She was always the one who said, you can get past things, all of that. And that is something actually as a family we are learning and carrying forward, because I remember at that time we used to think, oh God, she's such a pushover. People just walk all over her, take advantage, and she still welcomes them back in her home. But hindsight, in certain situations, it's a really good lesson for us, because then you realize how unimportant those small things are that you make to be so big, that force you to have disconnections with people, force you not to talk just because you didn't like what they wore or how they shared their opinion that you didn't like or something like that. So she was a great advocate of always being open-hearted.
That's a wonderful memory to have. What are some other special memories you have of her?
One of the ones I actually said in her eulogy. So there was, actually a couple of things. So she was notorious for birthday celebrations. And as a family, we were like, oh God, not another one. But everybody's birthday cake. Not necessarily a big party, but the cake had to come out. And honestly, as a family, we were just like, oh God. And then the other thing was that she used to do this little wink, and then she'd do a dance, kind of like wiggle, just move her shoulders and do kind of like a shimmy kind of dance when she was sharing something and stuff like that. And I actually said that in her eulogy relating to that. But but there's so many fond memories, because she was a really loving and giving person.
That's so beautiful. Yeah.
But one of the things I did say to my niece and nephew, to help, more so now as they're growing older, is to remember their mother as a complete person and not the ideology that they feel they should have because they've lost her.
Yes. What do you mean by that? Because, explain that a little bit more for me, because just so that we understand it.
Well, basically, there's a lot of goodness my sister had, absolutely lots. But then there's also acknowledging the things that irritated you about her. Yes. Things, about her that as a sibling, because I had 47 years with her, her kids only had about 20 plus years with her. So there's so much more history. So there were things as a sibling that we shared and, we fought about, or the way that, she was and stuff. So it's remembering that there were times where we didn't get on. There were times when she was horrible. I was going to use some other words.
Yeah.
but it's acknowledging that she was a true human being, just like I am on a journey that was, truly learning. And I don't want to and I certainly don't want to forget those parts of her and just paint her as being this saint and wonderful, godly, giving, loving person, because she was that too as well.
That's so good that you bring that out, because I think it's so easy once somebody passes to put them up on that pedestal and to forget those other sides that really absolutely annoyed you about that person, because we're all human after all. We've got the good, the bad, the ugly, and,
exactly.
And it's actually not disrespecting their memory.
No.
I often will say, about my daughter, because she was an absolute minx. She could be
Yeah.
a real toe rag at times.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and, I remember one time, say, putting myself into timeout just to get a break from her.
Yeah.
And 45 minutes, she stood outside of my door going, Mom. And like I was going, oh my gosh, you're so annoying.
Yeah.
But, but now I look back on it and, I love those memories. I
Yeah.
love, those things that really annoyed me
Yeah.
that she did, because she was such a character. And, as much as they annoyed me, they also made me laugh, and they also made me
Exactly.
move forward and through stuff. So,
Exactly.
yeah, when I talk about those aspects of her, I don't feel I'm disrespecting her at all, because all her friends or anybody who knows her will know she would just do some really, really push the boundaries. She would really push the boundaries, and then she
Yeah.
would just smile at you, and she
Yeah.
had the most beautiful smile. And she thought, and often it did, that smile could get her through anything.
Yeah.
And, and many people will agree. So,
Yeah.
yes, I love that you brought that up. And it's seeing that person as the whole person. Yes,
Yeah.
I love that. So, I know that you're very spiritual, and how do you have a strong connection with her now that she has passed over? Because I know for some people, this is something that's really difficult to get their head around because of their own religious beliefs or the way they've been brought up or whatever. But I know for me, and anybody who listens to my podcast will know, that I have a very strong connection with my daughter. Do you have the same with your sister?
It's weird that you would, you should ask that question, because the answer would be no. Okay, I'll answer that. So yes, I'm a spiritual being. Yes, I'm an energy healer, do tarot readings. I'm not open to mediumship. Doing it, knowing about it is different, but doing it, myself, I'm just closed off to that. With regards to my sister, there are times where I will get overwhelmed, because there'll be something that will just trigger a memory of her. And then I will have a cry, and then I will say to her, I miss you. And, as if I'm having a conversation with her. There have been times where she's come into my dreams. At the beginning, it used to be a lot more often, and it used to be more visible where she's actually come in to give me a message. Now it's very much that she's just part of a dream. As in, I forget that she's not here. So it just is the norm of the dream that she's just part of it. So I think I've just got accustomed to that she's not here anymore. And I wouldn't say that I feel her energy very often. I think maybe her children might do more so, because even though we were siblings, we weren't siblings that were calling each other every other day or, every day, that kind of closeness. So yes, on occasions, but no, not very often.
Okay. And that's good to know too, because, I feel that she is strongly connected with you, just how you described all of that, just those feelings and coming into your dreams. And that's how, spirits will often come through to people. And I think sometimes people are waiting for those big neon lights, to happen, to say, here I am,
Well,
and that's never how it happens.
Exactly.
It's always very subtle.
It is. And I think it's also that the mainstream misconception with regards to, you will hear bells. Please don't get me wrong. Of course, others may experience that, but it's, that you'll hear the bells, and then there'll be feathers falling everywhere, and, all of that kind of thing, and obvious signs. I think that's what I'm trying to get to, that there'll be obvious signs that people can identify and go, okay, now I get it. But actually, in my case, they've been very subtle. And I've not overthought with regards to the fact of if I ask for something or if I call her, that I can feel her or stuff. I mean, I do definitely say to her, okay, fine, fix my life now. You're there, fix it for me. I shouldn't be going through this. And there'll be times where you kind of feel, oh, okay, it's done. And then there'll be other times where you just laugh, going, oh, for God's sake, come on, give me a break now.
Yes.
But no, I haven't had any obvious signs. I think, as you said, they've been subtle.
Yes, yeah. And I have the same. I have a lot of subtle, signs that happen to me, but I'm just aware of them. And, and I have this fluttering when she comes into me. It's weird. Yeah. It's like she's giving me a hug when I need it. And yeah, it's just beautiful. Yeah. So that's good to know. So what got you through those tough days, those tough times of when you were on your own with nobody else around you to support you? What got you through that?
I got myself a routine, because one thing I did do religiously, and when I say religiously, I would just mean consistently, not in the pun religious, but I did actually, for just to get that inner peace and comfort, I used to listen to, as I said, religious folk songs, the Indian equivalent of prayers. So I used to, because there's so many out there and stuff, I used to wake up to those religious songs, and throughout the day or any time I kind of needed that comfort, just that sense of inner peace. So that was one of the things I used to do. Secondly, what I used to do was, as I said, I had a routine. So I always made sure, and I work from home, so I never gave up on the business. That was kind of like my lifeline and focus. So I used to wake up. I always made sure I showered, regardless of how I was feeling. I was going to get dressed. I was going to brush my teeth. I was going to shower, and I was going to get dressed. Not dressed wearing sweatpants and, lazy things that will just put me on the couch or, sit me on back into bed, but dressed in the sense that I would be, have my shoes on, so that if I felt like going for a walk, I was ready to go for a walk, or cafe or wherever I wanted to go. So I dressed, properly dressed. Yeah. So I had a routine so that I was mentally in my day and doing. And one of the wonderful things is that I have a wonderful support. None of my family live anywhere near me, but the friends I have made around me are my family away from home. So they surrounded me, and I was able to call on them, anytime I wanted and do stuff. So I kept myself busy. I kept myself around people when I needed them. And in times where they couldn't be there for me because they have commitments and family and stuff, and they can't be there 24/7, I made sure I had things in place that, would keep on lifting me and focusing me. But one thing I never denied myself was that if I needed to cry and grieve and to effing blind the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, I did that too. Great. So, yeah, so that's how. And then I don't know when it happened. I don't know how it happened. But then I was back to what seems normality now, pre-COVID.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. Pre-COVID. Gosh, definitely has changed our world, our lives. Yeah. So those are really, really good strategies to know, because some people just don't know what the next steps are, just how to move forward. And it's moving forward. It's not moving past that grief. Because I don't think that grief ever goes away. I think it just settles in a different way for us. Yes. And it's good to understand that, if you're making those steps, it doesn't mean to say you're forgetting what's happened or you're moving on with your life with that done and dealt with. It's not that at all. So I think that's good to make that distinction. It's actually just giving you structure so that you can cope and get through every day as best as you can. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's going to take longer than others.
Yeah. Exactly.
And whatever steps you're taking to do that, acknowledge those and just give yourself a pat on the shoulder and say, yeah, good job.
Exactly.
Good job. I did that today. So that's good to know.
Exactly.
So we're going to wrap up now. And I've actually changed the questions around for you. So I've gone to that. But normally I ask people, what is the best thing that's happened to you either today or this week that you want to share?
God, the best thing. I think I am in wedding mode, not my own wedding. I should highlight. Not yet, anyway. No, we have a family wedding happening. So I have just come back from having had a fantastic bridal shower for my niece. And she's getting married in less than 3 weeks' time. So we are, as a family, to think that 4 years on, we're in a completely different, energy, and we're, completely embracing it because we know that as a family, we have come through something major. So this is the first major happiness celebration that, is happening. And so we're all in that wonderful, loving, happy, celebratory mode.
Oh, that's so good to hear too, because some people feel like, life can never be happy again.
Yeah.
And it does take time, it's not an instant thing. And, it's 4 years, that it's taken for all of you to get together to have this wonderful event where you're all feeling, really joyous and happy about that occasion. So that gives, others out there great hope that, day by day, things change very subtly, of course. And so what are your 3 takeaways that you'd like to leave listeners with?
I would basically just like to say to them, honor your journey and your time. There are no quick fixes. Just because I was able to do it in, a certain amount of time doesn't mean that your journey will be the same as mine. So just honor that and be kind to yourself. Wake up every day and dress for the day. Dress for being part of the world again. Yes. Because it's so easy for us to not want to be part of the world. And the more that we shy away from doing that, the more we're prolonging that healing and journey. So, wake up and be part of the world. And thirdly, reach out and ask for support. If you don't have family and friends, nearby, nowadays everything is virtual. There's a lot of charities, there's a lot of organizations that are out there that can help. Use the internet. If you don't have that facility, find somebody who may be able to do that for you. But reach out to people, because just talking about it, that in itself is a healing. And journal. If you're not able to talk, even if you are surrounded by people, then write your feelings down or record it as an audio diary, whatever. But the more you let it out verbally, the better it is for you on a physical, emotional, and mental level in terms of healing.
Such wonderful advice there, Ambila. And I agree with you about the online resources that are available now are beyond what we could ever possibly imagine. So whatever it is you're needing, good old Mr. Google can probably, that's my go-to all the time. I use Google for everything.
I know, me too.
And so that's great. And I just want to thank you so much for just sharing your such honest and heartfelt opinions on your journey with your sister and how that looked for you and, what's come out of it for you. I really appreciate that.
Helen, thank you so much. You know how much I respect you and love you, especially with the journey that you've had and the person that you are. And one of the greatest honors of being part of this podcast is that I'm now connected to you.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got this international community that just fills my heart.
Yeah.
And for any listeners who are wanting to get hold of you to know more about the work you do, because you're a coach, you've been a coach for over 20 years and you've got some, great strategies and workshops and courses that you can offer people. How can they get a hold of you?
I like to think I'm the easiest person to find because everything is under my name. So
Yes.
all you need to do is either Google, my website is under my name, Instagram is under my name, Facebook is under my name. Just spell it right. You will find me.
Wonderful. And I'll put all those links in the episode notes as well. So again, my thanks for your time and gracious sharing of your journey.
Thank you so much, Helen.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode today, feel free to share it with others. Hit the subscribe button so you can be notified of each weekly episode. Also, rate and review, especially if there is more you want to know that perhaps we didn't have time to touch on today. And if you are after resources to help you out on this journey, head to healingtobeYou.com and check those out there. So until next time, be kind to you and thank you for joining us on the beautiful side of grief.